Hey, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Jin.
And I'm Shane Carvalho.
So Shane and I are incredibly honored today to be joined by Michael Valdes. Michael is the Chief Growth Officer for eXp Realty, the only Latino Chief Growth Officer of a publicly traded real estate company in the country, which is an incredible feat. Michael has helped eXp find tremendous growth growing globally, as he has led a team that's opened 21 countries in 22 months. And the craziest thing about that is he didn't have to ever get on a plane to do it. Michael brings just a wealth of knowledge on global expansion and growth for eXp, having been a real estate agent himself, but also combining that with his years of experience in global real estate and finance. One of the coolest things I found as I was learning more about Michael is he also gives back to other businesses and communities, being the chair of Area Global Advisory Board, Chief Executive Officer of eXp Latino, former board member of Pink and Blue for Two, which is an organization started by Olivia Newton-John to promote breast and prostate cancer awareness. And those are just a couple of the different board and advisory positions that he's been involved in. And finally, Michael is the host of the new Michael Valdes Global Podcast, where he discusses a variety of topics from real estate investing to personal branding, meditation, and also stories from just some of the most inspiring and positive energy people that he knows in the business. So Michael, we are so thrilled to have you on with us today.
So I think the interview's over, Michael. You basically gave everything I got to give. So thanks for having me. I'll see you next week. Take care.
Michael, Jin is well. Now I got two Michaels today.
I know we're gonna have to figure this out. We got a Michael and we got two Michaels and a Shane.
Yeah, but no, Michael Jin actually is great at introductions. That's why he always does the introduction. He's way better than me. But yeah, welcome, Michael. We're super excited to have you here.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here with you.
And Michael, just a tremendous amount of accomplishments in your career so far. We're going to hone in on that in this episode today. And where I want to start off is just kind of your experience as Chief Growth Officer for eXp. I led off the introduction by saying you helped the company open up 21 countries in 22 months without getting on a plane. I mean, that's a pretty epic statement to make right there. So how were you able to accomplish that? And what do you think set you up for your team up for success?
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys. This was an incredible accomplishment, but it was really the model that allowed us to do this. So I joined in May of 2020. So I joined right at the start of the pandemic. And there was nothing going on. There was no travel. People were dying to communicate. eXp World was an incredible metaverse platform by which everyone was still communicating. We were still conducting business. Real estate was one of those industries that remained as a critical part of our economy to continue operating. So we needed ways to communicate. Most offices were closed. And so we were able to do that as a virtual company. And that was one of the greatest advantages that I think we had as a company during the pandemic. And I remember when I first joined, I joined as president of eXp Global, and about a year ago was promoted to Chief Growth Officer for the entire company. But as the focus was on global at first, I came from a background of that. So I was at Realogy for 15 years. And I was the senior vice president of Realogy that did the global expansion for all 6 Realogy brands, which included Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Better Homes and Garden, and Corcoran. So my team and I there opened over 70 countries. And by the time I left Realogy, I was overseeing 113 countries across all 6 brands. And that was roughly about 300,000 agents. But when I met Glenn Sanford and understood what the eXp model was, I really understood that this truly was a disruptor in our industry, and really thought, my gosh, if we can really get this done on a global scale, it's a no-brainer. And so the more I really sort of dug deep into what this model was, the more I was excited about it. And during the pandemic was the perfect time to come in and try to do this and accomplish this. So before I joined, eXp was in the UK, Australia, and Canada. And it took the company 8 years to open up those 3 countries. We opened up the next 5 countries in 2 months. So from late October to December, early December, we opened up the first 5 countries in 2020. And then the following year, we opened up an additional 9. And then we continued from there. And yes, we did open up 21 countries in 22 months. which was an amazing feat. But it was because this model was remote, but there was a lot of things that we needed to do. We needed to have a strong team around. We needed to come in and imagine we were building a company in every single country in which we operated. So we were building the infrastructure from scratch. We're not a franchise, so we own everything that we build. So we had to go in and create the infrastructure, create the corporation, create the back office, do the banking, do the finance, do the accounting, hire a small team. And literally we were doing that every single month in every single country. So there was a lot of hands in this, and it was an incredible, incredible testament to what this model is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, Michael, that like I moved during COVID, and the reason that I finally said yes to EXP was because here in California, we're not allowed to go work in our office because we're not supposed to be in the building.
That's right.
I mean, me and my two assistants were in our small little private office in the building. Broker said, we're not breaking the law. And that like sealed the deal for me. So I could see how you leverage that globally. Yeah, that. Oh my gosh. And I'm glad it happened because I lagged on coming over. They worked on me for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm thankful actually that was the difference maker. But I appreciate you sharing that. And I was also gonna, mention, or kind of what we were gonna go on to was, well, unless Michael, did you have something you wanted to address there?
Well, I think part of it, Michael, I'm kind of curious because, like to be able to expand that quickly into so many different places all at once, like there had to be really like a plan kind of put into place. I think part of it is like the timing with the pandemic, like the value proposition that EXP has being remote. And then the timing with the pandemic really helped it to accelerate. But like when you guys are thinking about growing and expanding, like how far out are you looking, and what are some of the things that you're like looking at and looking into?
So there's no checklist. There's no magic number of anything, right? So it's more, you're think of it as the fact that we grew when I first came over, we were growing a global brand, and I looked at it in that manner. So think of it as though you were almost doing a shopping mall, and you want to get your anchor tenants first. So one of the first countries that we opened was India, Mexico, Brazil, large masses of land with a lot of agents in it. And so those were our anchor presence. There's over 1 million agents in Mexico. There's over 2 million agents in India. And when you start thinking about it in that manner, you wanted to create the brand and enough people to talk about it. By the time we got to country 6, we didn't have to explain who EXP was anymore. Everyone knew. By the time we got to Italy, Italy was like, oh my God, are you guys really opening here? And so the story shifts at some point where you literally create a global brand. Because now when I first joined, we were at 23,000 agents in 2020. And now we're just shy of 90,000 agents by just a few hundred agents. And so when you start looking at that trajectory of growth in such a short period of time, in just over 3 years, that's never happened in our industry before. So when you start looking at this as the fastest growing real estate company in our industry and the largest independent in the world, those are two things that, you gain momentum with as you continue that trajectory. So each country, in theory, gets easier by reputation, but every single one of them has their own singular challenges because real estate is so different in every single country. It's practiced really differently. Yeah. We're a different model. In some cases, we're not, our model doesn't work in some cases. Because when you have a franchise model, all you need is somebody to write you a big check, and the local problems are their local problems. And so here, because we carry all the responsibility of it, then we have to be very diligent about the countries in which we enter and make sure that part of that is also the number of agents that are there, the competitors that are there. We don't want to be the first to market. We don't want to create the market. We want to be able to bring the best model in the market. But if there's no other large agencies there, we're not going to enter. Doesn't make sense for us. It'll be very costly to teach a standardized real estate industry to agents and B, consumers. So we want to be at some place where we have healthy competition already and come in and show what an EXP model can do in that particular market.
I never thought about that. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, despite, all the success that you have had, looking back at the last 22 months or, during the international growth, are there any things like looking back that you think you could have done different or done better?
Sure, slow it down a bit. I think that because of our aggressiveness of going out there and creating this brand, we were on a rocket ship and literally we were building the rocket ship midair. And so there are things where if you had more time, you could have, thought about what could have been done differently. What I have seen is that leadership is always, always, always the formula for success. So our very first country that we opened, for example, was South Africa. And in South Africa, we had an amazing leader that we still have. And in the 2.5+ years, well, 3 years now, that we've been open in South Africa, there's 5,000 estate agencies in South Africa. So when we first opened, we were number 5,000 because we had nobody. And right now we're number 7. And so we have over 1,100 agents in South Africa that are incredibly productive. And South Africa is our 4th highest producing country.
Interesting. I had no idea. See, I had the fortune of meeting the broker from South Africa a couple of years ago at EXPCon. And it was just awesome. I mean, it's kind of hard to picture because I travel and we're from Portugal. And so family in Portugal, I spend time in different places. But, I don't know. It's just, I guess, and I understand because I have, realtors in Portugal and such, but I don't know. It's interesting to learn about real estate in other countries. It's so different.
Everything
and just getting the perspective. Yeah. It's so different. It's so, and you must thrive on that. Like you must absolutely love the whole international thing. Cause I mean, it takes like you have to love and be passionate to be successful. And with the success and the speed that you've taken, like you got to love it. I mean, do you speak any other languages by chance?
I speak Spanish and Italian. I understand Portuguese.
Oh, nice. It's my first language actually. And Spanish is my third, so I speak those 3. Okay. But yeah, it's those when you got Italian, you got the Italian and the Spanish, we can kind of make it work. A lot of hand stuff with the older members.
We'll figure it out.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. No, I'd love to learn Italian. It's a beautiful language as well.
It is.
I mean, for me, I speak Mandarin, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to plug in on any of those conversations easily. It's a very different language. But I guess, I don't know if you're allowed to preview this, Michael, but like, so what's next for you guys as you're looking to continue to grow EXP? Like what's
so
top of mind?
Specifically, we can't mention because it's considered insider information as a publicly traded company. But, again, going back to that shopping mall example, the idea of coming in and I apologize. I'm having workers in my house and I just heard them
no worries.
Over again. So it's the idea of creating a shopping mall effect where you want to have those anchor tenants. And when you do, you want to make sure that the shoppers that are coming in are going to complement any other store they go into. Right. So if I'm starting with an anchor tenant of like an Apple store, I want to make sure that if I put a Nike store in there, I've got the same owners coming, the same shoppers going into both. Right. So for me, it's an area of what makes sense with the EXP consumer that's coming in now on a global scale. That's why we started EXP Luxury, which is going really, really well. We've got over 1,000 agents now in EXP Luxury. We're about to expand it globally. We announced it in Canada.
One on this call.
What's that?
There's one on this call. He raised his hand.
I love it. And that's a program that's gone really, really well. I think that's something that's going to really do extremely well internationally. And it's just going to be exciting to see where things like that are going. So, Michael, you mentioned Mandarin. I would love to be in further in Asia, especially in China. China is one of those countries.
I would love that too.
Yeah. China is one of those. I've opened many brands in China. It's an incredible market. But here's the nuance, right? Because we're not a franchise. We are a US-based company, so we actually can't enter China as a US-based company. However, I already had thought of this early on, which is why we opened up Hong Kong first. And so we can open China as a subsidiary of our Hong Kong operations, which is how we would enter the country. But the other part of it is that because of the firewall that exists, we would have to put a server in country. But also in the due diligence that we've had, China is the only country in the world that doesn't allow for cross-border revenue share. So we would actually have to come up with a new model altogether for China. Otherwise, we'd already be there. I love the market. It's just a little complicated when we start thinking about our model being different as one independent real estate company. So that's actually a great example of where we do differ.
No, that is an incredible example, but I think it's also I love the strategic thinking behind that. You talk about the anchor points. It's like sometimes when you can't solve the problem directly, what are the ancillary areas that you can go think about and approach to be able to, eventually make your way into your overall target? And I think
that's right.
That Hong Kong example you gave was just fantastic.
Yeah.
So you talked about EXP luxury, and it sounds like that's one of the great opportunities like for EXP Realty in the coming few years. Like, what are some other big opportunities and also big challenges that you kind of see for the company going forward?
So listen, as you grow, you get new challenges, if you will, right? So, we will be crossing the 100,000 mark in the next year or so. And then when you get over that 6-figure agent count, there's very few companies that have ever reached that. And there's no singular company being non-franchised that has ever reached that. So there's no independent company that's ever reached the status that we've reached now, as far as one company with agent count numbers. So we continue to grow. And as we continue to grow, there's new challenges that come in, right? So challenges as far as leadership in different countries as you expand. There's things like currency fluctuations, sort of exposure to various currencies when your business is more dependent in other countries. However, we also sort of look at that's where our greatest growth lies. So when you start thinking about the fact that in the US, there's, 1.5 million realtors, you could find that in one country outside of the US. So as we continue to build, our focus is that we will eventually have more agents outside of the US than inside of the US. It's just simply a math equation. So we will be doing that as we continue to grow. And as we do that, you'll have, issues of language, of currency, of taxation, of repatriation of cash, of the fact that we're, a publicly traded company, different regulatory issues. So there's a slew of things that we look at as we go into different countries and as we continue to grow. There is also that sense where we found the greatest success is where people truly embrace what the EXP model has done for other people, right? When you start thinking about the things that you cannot put on a balance sheet, the things that don't fit on a P&L, when you start talking about the emotional quotient of what this model has done to change people's lives, and that gets translated into other countries and other languages and other experiences and other cultures, that's when it's a complete win.
And I asked that question. I appreciate you sharing that because, for the listeners of our podcast, obviously EXP is at a completely different scale for, real estate agents who are trying to run their own production business, but there are still lessons to be learned there. And I think 100%. You've hit on a lot of those things. One is, as you continue to grow and scale your business, you might be growing out your teams, and you really need those champions, for lack of a better term, that believe in your vision, your mission, what it is you're doing, and going out and spreading the message and spreading the word. So naturally you have that accelerated network growth effect.
For a team leader, the word comes back to culture. Whether it's the EXP culture or the culture that someone is building in a team themselves and they're growing, how do your team members how do you embrace the culture that you've built as a solopreneur agent that needed to grow into a team because the business got so big? And now the culture that you developed within your own business etiquette and what consumers were expecting of you. Now, as you start expanding into a team and you've got 20, 30, 100 members of your team, how do they ensure that the culture that you built as a singular agent gets out there as on a consumer level. So it's a very analogous type of issue and challenge that we face, us as a large organization of almost 90,000 agents and in 24 countries, or someone who started their own team and has 20 agents on their team and are trying to expand from one neighborhood to the next four.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, as I've grown my organization, I mean, like I've been in the business for, this is going to be my 24th year. And, I'm old school. Like I'm really big on customer service, customer journey and everything else. And, there's a lot of agents like myself that are kind of control freaks to a certain point. You're kind of afraid to, because you really got to teach as you grow, right? You can't no longer be the person and control everything. And I can only imagine on the scale of 90,000, some of the fear and panic at times, like Glenn or you guys have to be sometimes worried. Like, for instance, when I came on board, that's at the time when they thought we were just recruiters. When they saw the stats, hey, these people can sell, the world was blown away. And that was a huge step. I was already here when that happened.
Yeah.
That was a huge step for people. I think the other thing too, when creating this mentorship and guiding people on their first 3 transactions, I feel like since I've been here, you guys have made so many great improvements that trickle down and are actually making an impact. Like you're able to, just from corporate, you're able to actually control the whole 90,000 agents just by some of the stuff that you've done. And I think it's just brilliant. And I wanted to share that because like I freak out about my 42 people. And it's like, you're like, okay, here, hold my beer. Watch me handle 90,000. So, I look up to you for that because I would have lost all my hair by now.
Thank you for that, Shane. But, I think the difference with us is Glenn, myself, Leo Pareja, who I run side by side with as a chief strategy officer. The 3 of us were all agents. And you don't have that in any other real estate company where you have the 2 highest C-level execs and your CEO and founder that were all agents, right? So we understand the viewpoint of what all of you go through every single day. And that's the lens by which we make decisions. And so you use the word control, but we don't control agents, we serve agents. And so when you sort of come from a lens of serving someone, it's when you actually are able to have the greatest results, right? And I think the other part of that is, with my team, I don't even know how many direct reports I have, but they're a lot. And I don't know how to micromanage. I know how to hire good people and trust in the plan that we work on together. And then I'm there as a coach for everyone to reach the goal that we all have as an aligned goal with, again, the lens of sort of treating the agents and making EXP the most agent-centric company on the planet.
Yeah, I love that. And the part about saying how you were all agents, it makes a huge difference. I talk about that still being an active producer. I talked about leading by example, being in the market. There's all these gurus and coaches now that are not in the business anymore, or maybe never really produced at a high level, but they became these trainers. And also just earlier, the control thing probably wasn't the right word because I'm all about serving as well. But it was more just like, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like, you're able to have that effect. Like you're able to create that effect. And I like that there's not micromanaging. That's why I can't stand corporate.
Yeah.
And no offense, because I did my time at Century 21. I know you were with Realogy.
Yeah.
I did my Century 21 from 2013 to 15. And I loved a lot of the people I was with. Even our CEO at the time became friends, avid fishermen like myself. Just great experience. And in fact, one quick thing I want to throw in, there's always my claim to fame. Michael's going to laugh at me. But in 2014, globally, I was #1 in outbound referrals. I closed 41 outbound referrals in 2014. That was my claim to fame while I was at Century 21.
Love it.
But I just wanted to share that, you being there with Realogy and then being here, you can clearly see the difference. I'm an entrepreneur. This company really pushes entrepreneurship. And that's why I'm here. And I absolutely love it because I'm not good at the corporate stack. Like, look, you're here today with us. Are you kidding? I would have to go through like 5 freaking people to even get your name like 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
And you actually do bring up a good point, because there are no gatekeepers here. Anyone can reach. You can go reach Glenn. You know, you can jump into. We've got our workplace chat on our phone. All 90,000 agents and employees. Anyone who's got an EXP address, their phone number is there. You can call them. You can actually sort of get. There are no gatekeepers at all.
Right.
At all. And so, you know, it's sort of like, you went through my assistant to get on my calendar, but it's sort of like, because I don't touch my calendar. I travel 200 days a year, and I don't even know where I am any morning. So it's it's a deal we have. I don't touch my calendar, and then I show up where I'm supposed to.
That's awesome. Yeah, I try to be good like that, but yeah, you're doing it on a much higher level.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Now, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming this on your podcast platform, if you could do us a favor, leave a comment down below and let us know where you're listening or watching the show from today. It greatly helps with the algorithm and helps us get reach out to more people who need or want to hear what we have to say. We greatly appreciate it. And now back to the show. Michael, there's something you mentioned earlier when you were talking about your team that I want to kind of hone in on a little bit. You said you want to make sure you hire the right people. And when you said that, it actually got me thinking. We were talking with an agent broker yesterday who's actually based down in LA. She's made the decision to join EXP. So
Awesome.
that's an awesome thing. But she was sharing, about kind of, she had to step away from the team production concept because she wasn't bringing on the right people. And they weren't aligned with, they weren't aligned in terms of values and what they thought their goals are. So, maybe talk about that a little bit. What are some of the key things you look for when it comes to hiring and bringing on the right people to your team?
So, I think it's a continuation, right? Because you can hire somebody can have a great resume and they're just the wrong fit culturally for the rest of your team, right? And so some of the key things is truly alignment. And people will actually figure that out on their own. And some will elect to sort of like self-remove themselves if they don't feel that cultural fit. But it is that sense, I will actually go and make sure that we have a lot of the team members come into a lot of the executive meetings that we have, because I want them to know what's going on their level and what their contribution means to that agent. And so that's very important when we get as many of our team members over to EXPCon and some of our larger events, because that's the first time that they probably have seen the agent. And whatever they're doing in the back office, whether they're in our PR department, marketing, onboarding, whatever it is, and they just don't have the day-to-day with the agents, when they actually truly meet them face to face, hear the stories from the stage, really sort of get the ability to understand what their contribution is doing on the greater good, it changes their shift in thinking. So when you start thinking about it from a team's perspective, sometimes we have to take responsibility also in our messaging, right? Because if our messaging isn't clear to our team members, we shouldn't expect the team members to be psychic and say, they just don't get my culture. Well, have you eloquently described what your culture is, not by words, but also by actions? And let somebody know, it's sort of like if you guys have children, it's easier for a child to mimic behavior, right? So it's the exact same thing. If you actually go in and have a sense of who you are and you're just being what your culture is, as opposed to explaining it. If you have to explain it, it's not cultural.
No, exactly. And I love that, because literally yesterday with this agent, when we were on, she had questions about like, well, how am I going to be able to, like, I want to make sure I get the support necessary. And I was just like, okay, hold on a second. Let me screen share with you, because I'm going to show you not just that we talk the talk, but to your point, we walk the walk, right? And so I pulled up my screen and I said, this is what we can offer you. Like, here are the programs that we use. Like, I have a VA in the Philippines. Like, this is what I use to communicate with her. This is how the agents use this system to get their videos edited, to get their branding redone as they're transferring over to EXP. afterwards, she was like, wow, she had 3 pages of questions after I showed her like what we do. She was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, she got the culture up front. She didn't have to ask her questions. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Michael. But what I was going to say too is I was laughing because when you're talking about building the culture and communicating, like and you probably know from some of the guys in my group, we all talk fast, right? Mike, Connor, like I don't know, Michael, but you've probably been around. So we all talk really fast. Well, what's that?
I'm born and raised in New York. I'm right there with you.
Okay, God. So my poor operations manager, right? So I'm like always trying to convey stuff to her, and she texted me like even earlier. She's like, bro, like she's just like, and I'm thinking, I'm glad that they're trying to mimic more than trying to like listen, because I'd be horrible at saying it because I say it so fast that there's a period at the end of the sentence and they're still wondering what I said first. So I totally agree with that. But no, I was just laughing because I was thinking, the poor people in my organization, as much as they love what we do and as much as everybody's passionate and we've been successful together, I feel bad sometimes because like in my head, it's so clear, right? But I'm in a hurry. Yeah. So it's like, here, it's like,
yeah,
so bad. I'm trying to be better about that.
Back to that question of that agent that was saying, what kind of support am I going to receive? I think you actually shift the question back and sort of say, okay, we're giving you the keys to build your legacy. Who's responsible for your own legacy? Right. And so if the answer is you and you're responsible for your legacy, wouldn't you find the necessary steps that you would need to in order to achieve it? And so if somebody is saying, what sort of support am I going to get? Well, tell me what you're needing in order to reach your legacy, and I'll support you in that. As opposed to just going through a checklist of things, right? Because it may not be her checklist. You could probably have gone through 3 pages of everything you're offering, which could be off the roof, right? And she's sort of like saying, I just want to have, 7 to 8 o'clock free so that I can put my kid down to sleep, right? And sort of like, why didn't you say that, right? And it's sort of like, so it's like, what does that mean to you? Right. It's always like the question of if I'm serving you to give you the tools to build your legacy. What does that look like for you?
And I absolutely agree with that. And I should have given more background. With the podcast, I was just throwing out a quick example, but we were kind of in the conversation of like branding and marketing, like when that came on.
So I was going to say too that, Michael, what that reminds me of, especially in mentoring agents, is that kind of an analogy to that or something that runs parallel is that I have agents that always assume it's price or commission. Like you really need to know the true objection. So just like when they're asking you, what do I need? Or how are you going to support me? It's like you're actually trying to find out, well, what do you need? And I like how you're putting it back on them so that the blame game is gone.
That's right.
Right. Like you're putting it on them. So now they're the ones that are choosing to either have their legacy or not. It's no longer going to be your responsibility to make sure you get them what they need. And I love that. And
when I was selling, the greatest point was not price. It was terms. You needed to know where the pain point was for that seller or the buyer. Right. And I always say, the price had nothing to do with an agent. Your only job is to bring buyer and seller together. Price is determined by the market. You have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the other thing too, I had that conversation this morning with a client. It's like sometimes everybody wants it both ways. I'm like, you get price or terms, like let's pick here. But yeah, I'm a big fan of terms. Like I get away from the number a lot, but a lot of that has to do with kind of the way you're, saying it, the kind of to turn it around on the other party and figure out what the root cause or figure out what it is that's, going on.
I just bought a house in Dallas where I'm sitting right now. And it was,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a house that had a lot of action around it because they had a dramatic price reduction. And so I came in and I said, well, I don't like competition. So I came in and I offered full price. And I figured I can always negotiate during inspection periods. And at that point, psychologically, the house is sold to the seller. right? You gave me full price. It's sort of like, you know, you qualified, everything's great, blah, blah, blah. It's like the time to negotiate is actually every house has issues. And so you're going to go and negotiate during inspection period. And by that point, they don't want to go back into the marketplace.
I was actually going to ask because, yeah, your assistant said you were moving. I was wondering, so did you just move from New York or somewhere else?
So I still have my home in New York and Miami. So this is a third home.
Oh, got it. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're lucky. The Miami. I love Miami. Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Like every excuse I get, like we'll be there next year for EXPCon too. So every excuse I can. Yeah, I go back there for. I'm good friends with those guys with Gold Bar.
Oh, sure.
You know, with Ricky and Juan and those guys.
Yeah.
I love going back there anytime they have an event. Like I'm like, hey, I'll be there. You know, so that's a great place to be. That's actually one of my goals. Before my little surprise little cancer battle last year, I had been looking for a second home there just north of Miami because I love that area. And, you know, I love the ocean, boats. I mean, we're from the islands. We're from the Azores off the coast of Portugal. Like,
yeah, I know it well.
What's not to love? Yeah, what's not to love about being, you know, on the ocean? So, you know, it's great. But
and where are you?
I'm here in on the Monterey Bay. I'm in the I live at Aptos. I'm like kind of north middle of the. Have you been out to Pebble or the Peninsula or Santa Cruz or the Bay? You've been to the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, of course. I lived in San Francisco.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, then you totally know where I'm at. So just south of Santa Cruz, about 5 exits south, it's Aptos, and I'm in a pocket called Rio Del Mar. So like, I'm about maybe 10 houses back from the bluff here. I always need to be close to water, you know.
That's awesome.
I have another, and then I stay a lot down in have a part-time place with my partner down in Marina Del Rey, down in the LA area. So that's also by the water. Always got to be close to the water. But I do love Dallas. So I mean, the compromise, I guess, is keeping a place in Miami and then having a place in Dallas. I like that.
Yeah.
This is a question because it impacts me and I figure you on a larger scale, but you know, with so much going on, like trying to balance, I mean, you're traveling 200 days a year, trying to balance the demands of work with your personal life. What are like 3 principles that you like live and breathe every day that help you get to where you are? Because I feel like I run myself into the ground every day. You're like on a much larger scale.
I'm very structured. I always have been. So I get up really early. I get up about 5 in the morning and I get my workout in. And that time is really, really important for me. And then I have a time, I'm not even going to call it meditation. I have a time to pause and sort of and just reflect. And that's how I start every day. And, you know, there's windows of time that I need, because if you don't control your calendar controls you. And so everything that you want to do should be in your calendar. But then there should also be periods where you need to just stop, right? Because if you've got half-hour meetings blocked from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., there's no way you're going to remember at 4:30 what you did at 9 a.m. and what the notes from that meeting were. So if you don't have the time blocks in the day to reflect on what you're doing, you're not going to be effective. And so even with technology and with Fireflies and all of that and the AI note taking, you still have to read the notes. So you still need to have that time to be able to say, okay, what's next? How do I move this forward? And so there's blocks in my day that are just time blocks, which is what I use that time for. You need to know how to advance things, and you need to really delegate. You need to sort of have that strong team. You know, you were saying before, Shane, you and I are the same person. It's really hard to give up control. If you don't, it will actually sort of suffocate you. And so it's a hard lesson. Trust me, brother, because you're the perfectionist. You want to make sure that whatever you touch is that's going to make and give value to somebody else. And so you need to trust that those that are around you can have that as well, because then you can touch more. If you have to do everything, there's a finite number of people that you can touch, because there's only 24 hours in the day. That's the only equalizer all of us have. But if you actually learn to sort of say, okay, this just came through my funnel, I can't handle everything. I'm going to give this to Michael. I'm going to give it to John. I'm going to give it to this one. I'm going to sort of say, this has gone through. I've touched it and moved it along. Then Michael and John and whomever it is is going to continue that. Collectively now, instead of touching 10 people in a day, you've touched 100.
This is big, right? Because so you and I do have a lot of similarities. It's just that my structure is not as disciplined as yours. So I am a morning person because I think the morning thing it's BS when people say they're not morning people. But so I get up at 5:30. I love to exercise. I love to work out. There's been points in my career, in my life where I'm so religious about it. And I actually love it. Like a lot of people hate it. I love it. I compromise it so much. Like the last year after my health issues and coming back and everything else, like I don't have an excuse. I have a great gym. I have a detached garage. I made into a man cave gym. It's nicer than most gyms. Like, and I have everything I want there. Boxing gym, a couple Pelotons. I got weights, like more weights than some of the gym. I mean, it's like everything. And I want to hear this from you, because if you're that structured and you can do this, like, how do you not ever compromise that time?
You can't. Because the effect that you're doing, we talked about legacy before, the effect that you're doing, it's, you have to continue on that routine, especially, God bless you, going through that. I mean, I had a cancer scare when I was in my 20s, and I was diagnosed with colon cancer when I was 25. And so, so I'm 57 now. And so going through that is something where, you're not supposed to be tested with your mortality in your 20s.
Well, yeah, especially in your 20s. I'm in my 40s and mine was renal cancer. But yeah, I can only imagine your 20s. Wow.
So when you start looking at that and you start realizing that, every day truly is a gift. And if you start going through that, we just lost Rick Jiha, who was a really strong part of our EXP family.
I love that guy. I saw him on Thursday.
Exactly.
Not to cut you off, but his last words to me was, "Hey, it's good to see you, brother. Keep sharing your message. Love you." And that was it. Last time I talked to him, last Thursday at the conference. And those were his words.
Yep. And
what final words to get from somebody that I thought I'd see him at the next rally, or I'd see him again. I love that guy. That really impacted me. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to share that because
here's the beautiful part. In speaking about Rick, it was I got the call the next day, and it was the most unbelievable phone call, right? And so when you start thinking about, Rick is an example of always leading with his heart and leading with love. His celebration of life will be on the 29th, and they've rented out Oakland A's stadium, which holds 60,000 people.
That was mind blowing when I saw that. I was like, wow, he deserves it.
Now,
wow.
Talk about legacy. Talk about somebody that can fill out a stadium for someone to come in and say, this man touched my life. That's impactful. That's impactful. And we just all lived it in this last week with someone that we all knew and cared about. That's impact.
That was a hard one for me. That was a hard one. I lost a couple other people right before. One of them was a top Century 21 agent that was really close to that passed away. And yeah, just, two people full of so much life and so much light. And it just always seems like it's even more impactful when it's someone like that.
And Rick had a structured schedule as well, right? And when you start thinking about that, and when you start thinking about, I'm not going to miss a day, and especially if my gym is 10 feet away from me, Shane. And so it's like,
you know what, Michael, honestly, I've struggled from my very beginning. My first really top-notch coach I worked with back in 2002, he really worked hard. Punctuality used to be an issue. I'm decent with punctuality now, but the other one was honoring time blocks. Honestly, I've been a top producer. I've been successful. I've done well for the most part. But if I could improve my discipline of honoring my time blocks, I mean, sky's the limit. Like Michael Jr., he knows, we've talked about it. I honestly don't think I've even tapped half of my potential. And I'm 48 now. And that's like, talking about legacy, that's disappointing. I feel like I'm failing in building my own legacy because I haven't. And it's like, you've heard different gurus and different things. Like, for instance, that whole story about, taking this guy out to the ocean, and basically putting his head underwater and said, you don't want it bad enough. And, like you need to breathe, right? Or I'm sure you've heard something along those lines. And it's like, I say I want it and I'm a savage and I put in the work. But then I question, well, how bad do you want it? Because then you're not always hitting your workouts in the morning. You're not honoring your time blocks, and it's for me, it's not from being, I'm not lazy at all. Like I will out hustle and outwork anyone. It's not even that, but there's something missing for me that I can never hit that. So I love that you touched on that, because I imagine in your business and what you're doing every day, it's got to be even more critical. Like it's easy for you to get sucked in. You could sit on your phone all day, I'm sure.
Look, let me tell you something. It's like, everything around us is infinite. If you start thinking about it, air is infinite. Money is infinite. You can make as much money as you want. The only thing that's finite is time. We all have the same 24 hours. That's the only thing. And if you actually don't honor that the most out of the others, then the others suffer, right? So if you're not, and I love the fact that you put it as honoring your time. If you don't honor your time and commit to what that is, then you can't sort of like do the maximum of your infinite potential of the money, of the health, of the wealth, of whatever it is that you're building, because it all comes from time. Time has to be the most honored on the top, because then everything else does come from it. Do you know why I moved to Dallas? Because I actually realized that living on the East Coast and traveling as much as I was, I am now in the center of the country. I actually went to Newport 2 days ago on a day trip to just bring in another brokerage we're about to announce. And that was, I left here at 6 a.m. I got home at midnight. Guess what? It wasn't a 2-day trip for me. I wasn't in the air for 6 hours. I was in the air for 3. And that, if you started doing all of the math that I did of my trips, I gained a month of my life back by moving to Dallas.
I believe that. And it's funny that you say that, because I go to all the XP events. The XP events are on opposite ends of the country all the time. So now that you're in Dallas, are you going to bring more of these events to Dallas so we can all save a week of our lives?
Listen, I'm 3 hours from anywhere right now. So that's really what's crazy, right? I'm 3 hours from Mexico.
Yeah, no,
3 hours from New York. I'm 3 hours from California. So it really was a strategic move for me because of honoring time.
Yeah, no, definitely no. And I'm half joking because I don't mind traveling across the country, but it's interesting because you do save time, and then crossing all those time zones as well. I mean, it probably makes your schedule stay a little more routine with your body clock.
Yeah, I was doing it every week, and that's when it gets a little stressful.
Well, and Michael, I know we're kind of getting up towards the top of the hour now, so I want to ask you just a couple more questions. One, we kind of talked about Rick and the legacy that he was leaving behind, the impact that he had on people's lives. I'm bummed I never got a chance to get to know him, but pull back the curtain a little bit more on like Michael Valdes. Like, what is the type of legacy that's important for you to leave? Like, what is your end goal in this journey? What's your why?
And thanks for that, Michael. It really is the idea of the word legacy is really important to me, and we've said it a few times in this interview. And so about 3 years ago, I actually changed the name of my trust from my family name to Herencia, which in Spanish means legacy. And so for me, it was a constant reminder that is the end goal, to make sure that I've left this planet better than how I found it. And so that actually has several layers, which we don't have time in the next few minutes to get into, but it goes back to the idea of impact and service to others.
That's huge. Do you have children, or do you have descendants that you're kind of trying to leave a legacy for or build a legacy for?
I don't have children, but I certainly have descendants.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Also, I guess what we typically wrap up with, and I wish we did have more time. Maybe we'll get to chat again down the line. But
Part 2.
What's that?
Part 2.
Part 2, right? Yeah, I'd love to. So what we usually, like to end with is, because, a lot of the people that listen to our podcast, and one of the reasons we built this was to really help agents improve their businesses, newer agents, people getting going, people that need some uplift. I mean, we have a diverse audience, a lot of non-realtors listen as well. But really the question we typically end with is like, obviously you've been an agent, but hypothetically, I mean, knowing what you know today, what would be like one piece of advice you would give to somebody, let's say someone that just joined EXP, it's a brand new agent. What are maybe a couple things that you would give as advice for them to launch their business?
So it's probably one of the first pieces of advice that I gave 20 years ago plus, and I would still sort of say that it still holds true today. And it's a sense of mindset. It's believing that you can. I think the statistic is that 85% of the people who enter this industry leave within the first year. So if you're looking at that like behemoth of odds against you, why would you even enter? And so if you entered because you believe that you could, now if you're entering because you just saw $1 million listing and you think you're going to make $3 million in your first year, please don't come into the industry. It's not the reason to enter. If you're coming in and you're coming in truly from that sense of service to others, where they're going to come in and use you as that trusted advisor. Now, when we say that, that is a role that has to be earned. You have to make sure that you're bringing value to someone. So there is a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information out there from the 20 years ago that I started this industry. And when you start thinking about that, I can find out 95% of what I need to find out as a consumer on any property. What I don't know is what's the best school around that house? Where is the best restaurant? Where's that lifestyle that I'm going to go and experience by going into this community or this purchase that I'm going to be doing, right? And so learn what you can bring of value that isn't there before. And then you want to be that trusted advisor. So go learn everything about a neighborhood. There's now everything available to us on social media. Go do what you guys are doing. Start a podcast. Create something. You know, there's a great guy that works with us too, Levi Lassick, who 3 years ago never sold a house. Now he's selling hundreds of millions of dollars on houses because he did everything on the internet about living in Dallas. He created a social network. Never sold a house before 3 years ago. It's insane. So become an expert and bring value in something. Find your niche.
That's great advice. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, in fact, Levi, I met his marketing guy the other day. I'm pretty impressed because Levi pops up ads on my stream all the time. So, but yeah, thanks so much for sharing all that. And, you know, Michael, it's been such a pleasure. And, you know, when you do have time in your schedule, I feel like we will have to get into a part 2 because we were just starting to scratch the surface.
Love it.
So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, really
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it.
Appreciate it.